Anybody in touch with Purnell?
Yeah, Mr. Trevor, I texted him a minute ago.
Okay, thanks.
Morning.
Morning,
Good
Sonny.
morning, Sonny.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hi, Bon. Rochelle. Hi. Hi.
He just said he's joining now.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman.
Good
All
morning.
right. All right. It's having a little computer issue problems this morning. Thanks for bearing with me. Oh,
Mr. Chair,
see-
Andrea, I will be clerking the meeting this morning for you.
all right. Well, if we have quorum, we'll get right to it. Our Cuyahoga County Community Development Committee meeting is now called to order. Andrea, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Jones? Ms. Stevens?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Mr. Jones? Ms. Stevens? Ms. Simon?
Yes,
Here.
can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Mr. Gallagher?
Here.
Mr. Brady?
Here.
All right.
Ms. Conwell and Mr. Miller are also in attendance. I did not hear if Ms. Stevens was here
Excellent.
yet.
Hi, this is Janine. I don't think she's joined yet.
Well, we have quorum, so we will continue. Andrea, has anyone signed in?
There was no public comment submitted.
Right. Can we have a motion to approve minutes from the October 19th, 2020 meeting?
So moved.
Second, Simon.
But all in favor of approving the minutes, please say aye.
Hi.
Can you hear me? Oh, all right. Our minutes are approved. We have one item for today, a resolution regarding Clean Housing Partners. Andrea, would you please read the resolution into the record?
Resolution 2020-0244. Resolution amending resolution number R 2020-0078 dated March 16th, 2020, which made awards to various municipalities and nonprofit organizations in the total amount of $1,610,364 for various projects or programs in connection with the 2020 Community Development Supplemental Grant Program by changing the time period from April 1st, 2020 through March 31st, 2021 to April 1st, 2020 through July 31st, 2021.
Is there someone to speak to this matter?
Good morning, Sarah Parks Jackson with the Department of Development. This request is to extend the time of service for the Community Development Supplemental Grants. we've had various requests from cities and nonprofit organizations that were awardees that due to COVID need a little extra time to be able to complete their projects. So we are asking for approval of an extension until July 2021 to allow them to complete the projects that they were awarded funding for.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes. Questions from committee, Councilman?
Mr. Chairman, and my colleagues, I would like to thank Sarah Parks Jackson and the department for working with us on the extension and to share my own story about this. I was contacted by the Bel Air Puritas Development Corporation in my district. They are doing a placemaking project with the supplemental block grant funds at Jefferson Park, installing new benches and public art. They reported that COVID-19 totally disrupted their schedule. They had delays in getting necessary permits from the city of Cleveland, and they also had delays in getting the necessary construction materials. They asked for an extension of 3 to 4 months to be able to complete the project, and particularly they need to have some warm weather at the back end, which the extension through July would afford them. And I'm aware of at least 3 other grantees that have requested time extensions. So I strongly support the legislation and urge its approval. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions from the committee?
Mr. Chairman, not a question, just that, yes, I think, just in casual observation over the last several months, I've noticed a lot of projects, not just ours, but other projects that have definitely been stalled. So this is not a surprise to me, and I'm sure to nobody else. So I certainly would support this extension.
Mr. Chair, it's Sunny.
Bonnie?
Yeah, we're fortunate that we can control and be flexible the timelines for this grant, unlike CDBG. I don't know if I can ask Sarah Parks Jackson if the feds are granting any similar leniency for the deadlines that are set forth with CDBG grants.
To the councilwoman, through the chair, right now we are, excuse me, working with the Department of HUD to see if we can possibly extend the Muni Grant Awards, which are funded with Community Development Block Grant funds. What they did not do is provide us with an extension on what's called our time test, which is us showing how timely we can spend the funds. So that is the determinant. And if we get word that we can, in fact, extend the Muni grants for a few months, we will certainly come back and ask for approval of that as well.
And I have a second question. I mean, it's foreseeable that this might occur for the next year's grant awards, because 2021 might have the same restrictions because we're still going into COVID into 21. And, so I don't know how that's going to impact the rolling of the grants, but I just foresee that we might have to address that. And I'm supportive of being flexible. Thank you.
Excellent. Any other questions from committee?
Mr. Chairman, thank you. To Sarah Parks Jackson, have we been in touch with when you're trying to get the feds to give us an extension? Have we been in touch with either of our local Congress people or United States senators?
To the councilman, through the chair, no, we have not. I have been working directly with our HUD representative who is out of Columbus. And she's very good about getting back to me. If they do it, it'll be a national waiver that they provide to us. So we're just waiting word on whether we can have that waiver or whether it was included in the waiver that we received for our CARES Act dollars. She wasn't sure. So I'm just waiting for her to respond back.
Thank you very much.
For the record, Mr. Chair, I would like to announce that Ms. Stevens is in attendance.
Yes. I don't know if I'm having problems with my phone, but I heard you speak, Andrew, but I didn't hear what you said.
You are breaking up a little bit, Purnell. Just so you know. If you can hear me.
Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yeah, it seems to be him unable to.
I can hear you now, Andrew.
For the record, I just wanted to reflect Ms. Stevens is in attendance.
Excellent. Okay. All right. Well, I cannot fix anything computer-wise here for mine. I'm not sure what to do. Let's just continue on.
Who is next on the agenda, Andrea?
Next on the agenda is a presentation, the Office of Reentry.
Have we passed the legislation?
We have not. Hopefully you can still hear me. But if there are no further questions before, and no questions, I'll make a motion that we move this to the full council. Do we need
I'll second that
second
motion.
reading suspensions?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No. Okay.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Excellent.
Aye.
Aye.
Cheryl,
Hey,
I'm gonna
Andrea,
ask
it's
if you
Trevor.
can-
I just
perhaps
texted
Cheryl can share this.
Purnell.
Yeah.
Yeah, he asked if Cheryl can take over, please.
Okay,
Already did.
so we had a majority vote on the last. There was no opposition.
Right.
Andrea?
Correct.
Okay, so with no additional conversation, that's moved forward to the body. And now we have next on our agenda, because I was running to get to this meeting. We have a discussion, I believe Ms. Bryant is who's taking the lead on that. Is that correct, Andrea?
Yes. Again, it's the presentation of the Office of Reentry contract update.
Good morning, members of Council and Community Development Committee. Thank you all for providing us with a brief moment in time on this agenda this morning to present to you in regards to the restorative justice housing approach to mass incarceration. So as you all know, more recently, you all supported the Office of Reentry in moving a grant that would allow for us to invest back into our communities using restorative justice housing as a method to reentry strategy to hopefully combat recidivism and also improve the lives of our citizens who are uniquely impacted by having a criminal background and past convictions. So this morning, we want to be able to offer maybe one of many small mini micro presentations to give you a little bit more insight into what this project is. We hope to garner support from you. Please ask as many questions as you would like toward the end of the presentation. And also as this project develops and we move through the contract, we'd be happy again to come back and report and discuss impact, metrics, et cetera, whatever information you'd like to know. It's very important to me that the executive branch of government, i.e. being some of your divisions throughout Health and Human Services, work with our legislative branch relatively closely so that we can ensure the greatest result. You all know that I speak really fast, so we will not hold you too long this morning as we move through this. So the first thing, right? What is the restorative justice housing approach to mass incarceration? What does that even mean? And so the first thing I want to do is be able to provide somewhat of a general definition for you. Restorative justice as a whole is the opportunity to look at how do we repair the harm caused by crime and in respect to community development within our communities. So in our communities for years, being riddled with crime, it creates decades of decreased investments, low performing school systems, high unemployment rates, substance abuse issues. All of these are factors that perpetuate cycles of mass incarceration. So by utilizing a restorative justice approach as a reentry strategy, what we get the opportunity to do is advance a data-driven practice. We get to create functioning communities. We get to stabilize human beings in their most basic necessity, a place to live. So co-presenting with me this morning, we have Erica Anthony, Executive Director of the Ohio Transformation Fund. We also have Elizabeth Richards, who's the Senior Program Director at Enterprise Community Partners. Elizabeth will be spearheading the grant project through the Office of Reentry, and both ladies are co-chairs of our Greater Cleveland Reentry Strategy Leaderships Coalition Justice Housing Work Group. And obviously, my name is Crystal Bryant. I serve as your director of our Cuyahoga County Office of Reentry. And if you don't know me, I have bigger problems. All right. All right. So what is our vision?
Who speaks first, Ms. Bryant?
I am still going, Councilwoman.
Oh, okay.
I'll guide you through this. All right. So what is our vision for this project? As stakeholders and dedicated public servants, we have a duty to seek out and support resolutions to issues faced by our constituency. For far too long, we have chosen to invest in all of our resources in one area of multifaceted issues. We look at the client to produce the result, and we fail to recognize that no matter how many great programs we have, we fail our constituency if we don't begin to invest in a system that restricts the equitable opportunity and access for advancement for all. So in short, our vision with this project is to solve the problem so that we no longer just have clients that are returning back into our community, but we have clients that are thriving and advancing in our community who are directly impacted. So what do we do as an office, right? We have to create a space where we not only work on making financial investments, but also investments in changing restrictive process, restrictive policies, creating real collaboration, opportunities for partnership, and not consistently creating duplicated efforts and services, but really filling gaps to meet the needs of our unique community in Cuyahoga County. How do we do this? Our role as an Office of Reentry is to serve primarily as a funder, a convener, a capacity builder, an advocate, and an initiatives coordinator. So we have a PowerPoint presentation. I'm not sure if that is in front of you all, and we definitely can send it to you separately if you cannot see it. I'm now going to turn it over to Erica Anthony of OTF.
Excuse me, Crystal, this is Janine. Are you guys going to share your screen with the PowerPoint?
I didn't know we could, Janine. You know, I'm not that tech savvy, but Erica may be able to share hers.
Give me one moment so I can have the proper view here. Okay, are folks able to see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Yes, thank you.
Oh, you're quite welcome. Actually, I'm going to turn it over to our colleague Elizabeth, and then she'll kick it back over to me to go through the problem.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Thanks, Erica, and thanks, Director Bryant, and good to see you all this morning. I just want to introduce myself. I work with Enterprise Community Partners, and it would be, although I am new to most of you, Enterprise would not be new to you. You know us from the Housing First Initiative, working closely with the Office of Homelessness Services. You know us through the EITC Coalition, bringing millions of dollars back to county residents, households, and you know us through a very unique initiative in partnership with David Merriman and others on your team, the nation's first county level pay for success program. So I believe we're 5 years plus in there, and that was just a really interesting partnership and lots learned there. But we're excited to be bringing forward this latest conversation to you. And this touch point with the County Council is very important as it begins our real stepping out on work that's been going on for several years, but work that we're needing to raise with our government partners and other important stakeholders in the community as we start to move forward full bore in 2021 after incredible work led by Director Bryant and Erica Anthony here today. So again, thanks for having us. So just very briefly, want to outline a couple of things if we go to the next slide here. Most of you know that, just want to set a little bit of context, and much of this everyone here is familiar with. The work we're talking about today is happening in context of an already challenging situation for low-income households in the county. Rents over the past decades, rents have increased faster than wages, as you know. Historic redlining often means that housing, there's a geographic mismatch between where you can find rental housing or decent rental housing and where the jobs are. We know that overall there's a lack of affordable housing for very low income populations in the county. So there's a high level of cost burden already for families. And we know that for the very low income, we need thousands of units. And altogether, we're not rehabbing enough of the housing stock or building enough apartments to meet the need as it exists today. So already there's what we call housing insecurity and cost burden that exists in the county for family households. And this is the context, if we can move to the next slide, that we are bringing individuals who are returning to the county into as they seek housing. So right off the bat, as you hear us talk about this work, homelessness is one of the first issues we address. Formerly incarcerated individuals are 10 times more likely to be homeless than the general population. And the risk of homelessness, the vulnerability to homelessness, depends upon whether you're Black or white, male or female. And specifically, we note a problem locally for women. If you are a Black woman, you are 4 times more likely to experience homelessness than if you're a white male. And that is if you are justice involved locally. So it's a really big issue for us. You would know this again already. I'm not telling you, and we aren't, anything that you probably don't already know, but individuals returning to the community from prison or jail are also are both re-entering the workforce at the same time that they are looking for housing if they don't have a place to stay right away. We're all familiar with collateral sanctions. So once you've paid your debt through incarceration, you still may often come out with heavy debts. Lots of issues to address in terms of rebuilding life with family reunification or getting paperwork and papers in order. Credit may also be a big issue. Certainly, if you don't have income, you're going to have a lot of difficulty paying for security deposits. Double security deposit and first month's rent is a big barrier for individuals. But the largest barrier really is wildly inconsistent application of criminal background check and or credit check policies for individuals seeking housing. So very little uniformity between landlords and those looking for housing in terms of whether there is a criminal background check. If there is it a 2-year look back, or is it a 5 or a 100-year look back? Does it include misdemeanors and or felonies or certain kinds of both? So very inconsistent application, which we find is a huge barrier for individuals returning. Erica, I'll turn it over to you. Erica?
My apologies, you froze for a second, so I couldn't tell if you had finished up. So my apologies. Good morning. Thank you so much, Elizabeth and Crystal, and thank you to all the council members and staff that are present today. Just a brief reintroduction. I have been before this committee before in previous capacities. As Crystal indicated, I currently serve as the Executive Director of the Ohio Transformation Fund. I've been here for almost a year, started in December of 2019. For those that are not familiar, OTF for short is a funding collaborative with a goal of investing in organizations that are advancing criminal justice transformation across the state of Ohio. I have been before this committee before in some regards to what Elizabeth spoke to. As many of you know, I was previously with the Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, where I served and led the policy work there, working on many issues, one of which is this that started under my tenure at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress and continues. So really fortunate to be before you all again this morning. So Jen, again, just to kind of continually contextualize where we are today. Thank you, Elizabeth, for laying out the overall challenges that we're experiencing with housing insecurity in Cuyahoga County. These numbers should not be surprising to you as it pertains to incarceration here in the state of Ohio. But even just to zoom back just a little bit, we have just over 2.3 individuals incarcerated throughout the entire United States. 1 in 58 adults is under some form of supervision. Here in Ohio, we have just over 44,000 individuals in our state prisons. And we'll get into here in a moment, what does it look like at the local level with our county jail? Elizabeth has already laid out very clearly the challenges that individuals face upon returning from incarceration. We know that collateral sanctions, laws, and policies inhibit the ability for someone to successfully reintegrate back into their community. Countless research for decades has shown the two leading factors for an individual to successfully reintegrate and not recidivate is securing housing and employment. Understanding this, we know that we do have an overall affordable housing crisis in America, and we experience that here in the county that we reside in right now. And this problem is exacerbated for individuals with a criminal background. We came together, again, when I started this work with Elizabeth, when I was at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress, along with Director Bryant, to really bring together the forces of great assets that we have in our community. We are fortunate that we have a very robust community development network here in Cuyahoga County, specifically in the city of Cleveland, as well as longstanding reentry stakeholders who have been addressing issues pertaining to those with criminal backgrounds for quite some time. What was not happening was these individuals weren't talking to each other. So we felt that it would behoove us to bring these folks together so that we could create solutions. So specifically here in Cuyahoga County, I just noted that we have just over 44,000 individuals incarcerated in our state prisons. Unfortunately, Cuyahoga County, along with some of our counterparts in Columbus, Franklin County, as well as Hamilton County, we tend to carry the largest load of both incarcerating the highest percentage of individuals to state prison, as well as receiving the highest percentage of individuals coming back from state prison. I will say, when I moved to Ohio, this number was much worse. I've been in Ohio for almost 15 years. When I came here in the early 2000s, we had somewhere upwards to a quarter of the state population coming back to our county. So we have seen progress, and that progress is really driven by those that are committed to advancing transformation of our criminal legal system, and having the foundation of a county office of reentry has been pivotal in us seeing these changes. But we still do have about 2,500 individuals returning from state prison back to Cuyahoga County, and about 18,000 individuals that are cycling through our local jail. So on average, we're looking at just over 20,000 individuals that are coming back here who have a myriad of needs, one of those needs being housing. And I'm going to now turn it back over to Elizabeth. Thank you all.
Thank you, Erica. So just a few more slides as we move into wrap up and Q&A with all of you. But just want to reiterate what Erica suggested, which is that Cuyahoga County is really fortunate to have in place. And we think that we can replicate work that we can really leverage the resources that do exist to create a comprehensive approach to meet housing needs for individuals returning. As you know, we're not going to show the data slide, but based on that number Erica just shared, 20,000 individuals churning back into and out of Cuyahoga County on an annual basis. We know that 100 individuals returning from prison go straight into the shelter system. What we know less about and have mapped a flow around are approximately 4,000 individuals every year who are coming back, who are housing insecure. So they have a place to go. They're very likely off lease. They're staying with family. It may not be permanent, and it may not be enough for individuals to really get secure and stable and get to the work of rebuilding lives. And so As you can see with the quote from Director Bryant here, and as Erica noted, the stakeholders really have identified housing as an important need. It's one you hear about anecdotally from workforce partners in particular, as individuals are entering workforce programs and re-entering the job force. They are still struggling to find safe, stable, decent, affordable housing. Next slide, and we'll just move into some of our response here in terms of the solutions. So as Erica indicated, can you hear me, Erica?
I can. My slide is just not advancing. So just give me one moment. You keep going.
When stakeholders came together, this was the community development table with the criminal justice sector coming together in the Justice Housing Working Group. We asked and have sought to answer the question, what would we do if every person returning to Cuyahoga County had access to safe, stable, decent, affordable housing? This is a question that we've asked and answered in other areas, for example, around the chronically homeless in the county. And it's one we think we can ask and answer here for the work locally. So the goal of this effort would be to decrease homelessness and recidivism. Of course, as you can hear us speaking to these issues, increase access to opportunity and work, really tighten and create an already existing system, but make it stronger, tighter, and more collaborative. And then ultimately, do more. This can be a new approach to redeveloping our communities that's focused on trauma-informed approaches. As Crystal noted in her opening, really taking a restorative lens. So getting to the root core of some of what really creates and sends people into the system in the first place. So that's really the context and the goal and the vision of this work. Very briefly, I'll touch on, if we want to go to the next slide, a little bit about what our strategy might look like. Erica, if you can advance, or when you advance, that's great. But if you will recall, back in January of 2020, the County Office of Reentry released an RFP, recognizing that affordable housing was going to be key to a strategy going forward. They released an RFP to engage an entity that would lead planning and strategy process going forward. And Enterprise tossed our hat in the ring, and we're very, very excited as of a few weeks ago to have received approval at County Council to lead this work over the next 2 years. We'll be pursuing a line of work that includes a handful of strategies. One, will be formalizing and convening our partners, some of whom are already at the table, but really looking to have the cross-sector table set so that we can leverage all the resources we have to solve this problem. We have some initial research and data, and we will be really drilling in on a data-informed approach. So of the 4,000 individuals who are unstably housed, what really do we need to see in terms of housing strategies? Number 3, it's education and outreach. So working with key stakeholders, such as this conversation today, to make sure that people understand the issues at play, understand some of the possible solutions, and really begin to prioritize serving this population in all of our work. So this cross-cuts, as Director Bryant says regularly, reentry cross-cuts housing and social services and all of the work we are engaged in throughout the year. We are hoping to pilot housing strategies, so working across a number of program solutions. We're looking to, one, leverage our private housing partners, so nonprofit and for-profit, working with landlords to liberalize their housing policies, allow individuals with criminal backgrounds to more easily access affordable housing in the community. We are looking to pencil out and model housing development approaches that we know work. Some of that you'll find in the permanent supportive housing approaches we have already successfully deployed in Cuyahoga County, and some will be new models. We're also very fortunate to have partners like Corporation for Supportive Housing at the state level, Eden Inc., which operates locally. We have some fantastic models on the ground that we can look to scale. So really exciting work as we roll up our sleeves, kick this off in early 2021 and get to work. 5 years from now, we should have a much stronger system than we have today. Crystal or Erica, over to you.
But certainly last but not least, how do we take action, right? Like, what is it that we collectively do to ensure that these things are happening within our community? And what you're looking at in front of our slide is what we all are doing collectively. So we're committing to applying a racially equitable lens to our solutions. And only as a council have you put forth a commission, but as an office 3 years ago, in our last strategic planning session, we made a decision that we would have a strategic planner come in and create a community plan that was equity focused. We engage in a continual learning and commitment to shift the narrative. So this is a part of that, ensuring that you all are not just aware of what you're passing in a quick snapshot and for a brief moment, but often that you're engaged in the process and your hands are in. And if you need information and if you want to know how you share or get more involved in it, the Office of Reentry is always open to having our council members. We welcome it and we're grateful for your support. Embedding solutions to support justice involved persons in all programs and services. A part of this particular contract will uplift the voices of those who are the experts. It will be stipends to provide for those individuals to provide their expertise in terms of how they were able to shift their own narrative, how they were able to thrive and advance in a community that often is not polite or easy for them to get around and narrate when they're attempting to find housing solutions for themselves and their family members. It'll fund solutions that support affordable housing options for justice involved persons. And it won't just be from a county. One of the other interesting pillars or pieces to this project is that the way it's written into the RFP, whomever the grantee is also charged with fundraising. And so they have to look at what are the public and private opportunities collectively to have financial support for sustainability beyond government purposes. And how do we make sure that, we get a real work product out of this? And last but not least, maybe even most important, because it is the piece that, often, even if money dries up, it is still in place, and it's passing policies that prevent housing discrimination and end the systems of mass incarceration that prevents individuals from living within their communities and having a second chance and opportunity at a good life, a great community, and again, to not just return, but advance. And so if you all have any questions, we are now open to taking questions from you all as a group.
Thank you. Any questions from my colleagues?
I have one after the committee if no one else has one.
No, go ahead, please.
Through the chair to Director Bryant, it was discussed that the plan is to deliver over 150 units of housing for the justice involved population. What does that look like in terms of affordability for the returning citizen?
So Councilwoman Conwell, I'm going to pivot that over to Elizabeth, who will be leading the project.
Councilwoman, that's a fantastic question. So that 150 units is based on a couple of different strategies, and the majority of those strategies would, or probably 50% of the strategies would include very specifically an affordable housing aspect to it. The rest of the strategy would involve working with private landlords in the market to liberalize their approaches. So the strategy is, I would say, four-prong at this stage. One, we are working with our shelter partners. So those who are sheltering individuals with high housing need who are just unable to access the market, that would be very affordable housing. Secondarily, we would be working with our existing community development and affordable housing partners to a term we are using, but looking for a new way to say this, but unlock existing affordable housing through better policies and a more progressive and understanding property management approach. So looking at tenant selection plans for existing low-income housing tax credit projects to understand how individuals with lived experience and criminal backgrounds can more easily access housing there. And then that 150 units does include some new approaches. So how can we use existing resources again, like vouchers that would be leveraged from the Public Housing Authority, CMHA, into projects that are coming online. Those could be nonprofit, affordable projects. They could be otherwise, but where we are bringing resources in a new way into projects to serve with services individuals that are in need of housing. And then fourthly, it would be developing some new projects, and those would likely fall into a couple of different categories. One would be a permanent supportive housing project that does have a model of providing supportive services to individuals with higher need, and that would be a single project type where you have multiple units units within one building. And then we would look to a scattered site approach. So combining services and subsidy to work with, again, scattered site units throughout the community. So I don't know, I'm skating around. I mean, the funding source will really determine the level of affordability, but as you can see, working from the shelter system all the way up into the private market, you're going to have a range of affordabilities.
And Councilwoman Conwell, if I can offer a why to that, the reason why some of this is being done that way is because uniquely, these are individuals. I talk about decompartmentalizing the way we think about human beings all the time in my many speeches. And so with that being said, when you work directly with the individuals, I've had the pleasure of being in government for 17 years, starting as a caseworker, and some things have changed. Some things have not. And when you have the privilege of working with people as human beings, we have some returnees come to our office and say, hey, I have a job, I have gainful employment, I make this amount of money, I have a daughter, I just can't find a unit because the policies are restricting me from being able to access housing. You have some individuals who say, I can't find anywhere to live. You know, I can't find a job, I only make this much money, I have limitations. And then you have someone who says, I have the financial resources, but I have this type of background and now I'm restricted from living in a space. And because you can't really have a cookie cutter approach to the way we do things, we had to find a very broad and strategic way to do this as a pilot. So all of these are pilot models to see what best works, with the ultimate goal of scaling and leaving no one with unstable housing, and being able to take a little bit of a toll off of, well, no longer Ruth's back, but Melissa's back from homeless services as we work in partnership, as well as development, and even think about how that impacts Sarah's unit as well.
Okay, I have a question that ties directly into my council colleague's question. As someone who works in affordable housing every day, you know that one of the reasons that several of the funding sources that Elizabeth just mentioned don't work is because there are federal restrictions prohibiting people with any violation of federal laws or any type of law that would have sent them to prison within a 5-year time frame. And so I have housing units that sometimes go vacant because everyone who's applied for them has had anything from a felony to a misdemeanor within the last 5 years. And housing authorities are really tough on those guidelines. And only where I have units that I don't have any public subsidies in them can I just put anyone in a unit. No matter how they've cleaned up their act, it is incredibly important. So what lobbying efforts are you making with our congressional and senatorial delegation to make some exceptions for that, or to create pilot funding? Because one of the problems for creating this type of housing is that low-income housing tax credits very rarely, unless it is specifically designed as a re-entry project, will fund it. CDBG, housing vouchers, anything that even sniffs of HUD is not allowable for this type of project. So what are your sources that will help you achieve this? One of the groups who's been successful in doing alternatives is Eden. Have they come up with new ideas for how you fund this? Because I'm a boots on the ground kind of person. I want to know how you're going to make this happen, even if it's just to make 10 of these units happen, so we have a pilot that works. Who answers?
Councilwoman Stevens, I think Elizabeth and Erica can both speak to this, as the policy and process piece was mentioned in the presentation. So whomever wants to go first, have at it.
I will just start, and then Erica, toss it to you. Well, I'm hoping that this means you're volunteering. I know you're incredibly busy, Councilwoman. I think you're asking the questions that we have to go right into. We know that HUD released some guidance in 2016 that hasn't been fully realized. You may be ahead of the game in terms of really interpreting and understanding how to incorporate some of that guidance into your tenant selection policies, but many of our local partners have not. So that's really where we have to start. Legal aid and Housing Resource Rights and Resource Center locally have really led the charge on behalf of the Office of Reentry, in terms of understanding that guidance locally. So that's the first piece of it. But secondly, yes, exactly what you said. We are going to be looking at, are there pilot programs with funding sources that are new that we can hatch here, and or can we push and advocate for a more liberal application with the resources we do have? So that, and Eden is one of our local leaders on this. So we will be working with the Public Housing Authority. We will be working with our affordable housing community and our government stakeholders to understand what we can work with and where we really need to have a strong policy agenda going forward. And Erica, with the mention of policy, turning to you.
Sure. Thank you, Councilwoman Stevens. I'll just add to what Elizabeth said and build on a little bit of what Crystal said earlier. We know that we have to have a multi-prong approach because of the reasons that have been laid out and stated by yourself. The fortunate nature that we have is that we have what we believe are the configuration of partners that have this knowledge. Having worked in the reentry realm for majority of my time here in Cuyahoga County, what I know prior to myself working at Cleveland Neighborhood Progress is this entire world was completely foreign. We talked about it at a very high surface level, but many reentry stakeholders are not housing financiers or housing developers, right? So we were at a disadvantage because we didn't have this cross section of partners, just as equally as important to the community development folks who don't have maybe the deep knowledge of all the needs that returning citizens are facing. So that's one plus that we have coming into this initiative, is that we have all the critical partners and stakeholders. The other important component that Elizabeth noted is having those that are justice involved, returning citizens at the table, so that we can have the real lived time experience of those individuals. From a legislative standpoint, when it comes to advocating 100%, this needs to happen at the local level, the state level, as well as at the federal level. We are obviously in the gray zone, maybe we'll call it, of shifting from the national level. And we'll see where the new administration goes under President-elect Biden. Things have been challenging the last couple of years as it relates to it advocating for equitable justice policies under the current administration. But we have great partnerships with Senator Brown and Senator Portman, as well as our congressional leaders. So thankfully, not just those of us that are represented here before you all, but many members of our Justice Housing Initiative do as well.
What looks like the best source of funding to begin to create more housing that serves everyone who falls into need?
So I guess I can start by just, again, laying out some context before Elizabeth or Erica decides to dive in. So what the office is granting to support this project is $600,000. That's over a 3-year time frame. So I think one of the things that is important for us to lay out that perhaps we didn't map out very clearly is this is a 3-year opportunity. And the opportunity starts with the ability to create data and moving from a data-informed decision-making process to the creation of a strategy through a collaborative model with these various partners, including legislators, those who are directly impacted, et cetera. Our office is 100% levy funded, with the exception of a federal grant that we usually do not include into our budget. That federal grant expires at the end of 2021. And so most of the resources for this project is still approved by those who are actually on this call with us today. I think levy dollars, at least as a starting point, are the easiest. Our office is not codified. We're not created by a revised code. We're not created by an administrative code, and we don't receive federal funding. So in some aspects, you know, normally you may wipe a tear as a director when you don't get those things, but you're also not limited and restricted by those things. So we have full possibility is what I would speak to from that perspective. And then Elizabeth or Erica, if you want to chime in terms of how you're thinking about going through this process thoroughly, fundraising, and what avenues you may want to utilize to, you know, scale up the models once we have a strategy in place.
Sure. And I would say this won't be a surprise, but the Housing Finance Agency, so Ohio Housing Finance Agency, has been very interested in serving, identifying returning citizens as a vulnerable population and expanding the services and housing model. So we are expecting to be able to bring a low-income housing tax credit project forward specifically in Cuyahoga County. So that's one source and just one, but it is a traditional source, and we do have, we think, support and interest there. We would also look to our public housing authority. CMHA BJA has been a good partner. Erica has a track record with a housing strategy specifically serving individuals who are justice returned. It is a federal program, obviously, all of the constraints, Ms. Stevens, you just noted, but we would be looking to perhaps be creative with the vouchering resources there. And we do have models of public housing resources being used for this population, if not in Cuyahoga County, elsewhere, where there is a very high touch and re-understanding of the criminal background relative to serving a particular population. We did a site visit last year to New York City, and as the housing developer and manager we met with there, Crystal and Erica joined for this, indicated it is a patchwork. So there will be no real avoidance of a patchwork approach, at least initially, as we get these models off the ground. I guess lastly, I would say before turning to Erica or back to Crystal, would be that we would be looking, and the County Office of Reentry is well positioned with DOJ and BJA grants previously, but we would really be looking forward to tapping and leveraging national resources that are coming out of the Department of Justice and BJA.
The only thing I will.
I'm sorry. I see one of my colleagues has asked a question.
As we're moving forward, I just want to be clear. It looks like the 150 unit project is geared to the most recent returning citizens, or is that when you speak about the models, the various different individuals that are returning and that have returned? Because I believe it was Cheryl that stated that, you have individuals that are lawyers and have moved on, but still that policy restricts them from being able to get their own housing. So, and I would assume that they wouldn't possibly want to live in the same type of a unit as someone that is just returning. Can you clarify that a little bit? Is this 150 units in like one unit facility or various?
It's various, Councilwoman.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Erica, if you could tell us, is there anything, sometimes it's easier for elected officials, whether it's at the local level or the federal level or state level. If there's a small example, you heard me say a 10-unit property, something small that works for at least a year, so that you can that people can see it, touch it, drive by it when you're not even with them, and it becomes very realistic. Are you working, because 150 is a big number, and you're trying to cobble it together in a variety of ways? What about a small success?
For sure. So I will say that, the first barrier that we had to overcome was data. There's lots of data on the incarcerated population. There's lots of data that, provides speculative understanding of the barriers faced by individuals when they return. Where we start to trail off a little bit is when you get to the more localized data. So one of the first steps that we went through was commissioning this report that the Corporation for Supportive Housing ultimately did for us, because what we didn't have was a baseline number. So the number of 150 came from this baseline research that was done. If folks have been following reentry in Cuyahoga County for at least the last 2 decades, might recall the iconic Urban Institute report that was done in 2003. Very, very costly report. Crystal's office, as well as many of the advocates, have continued to be in close contact with Nancy Levine, who conducted that research, but we really haven't had any localized research since then that's honed in specifically on Cuyahoga County and the residents of this community. So that was our first challenge that we had to overcome. There is much more work that needs to be done when it comes to research to understand the population. The challenge is when someone is released and they're not under supervision, there's no way to track that individual. So most of the data tends to be qualitative and anecdotal data. Individuals couch surfing, cycling in and out of our homeless shelters, in other ways that they are just trying to sustain themselves. So understanding that the population is not a monolith, as Director Bryant was saying, the solutions also cannot be monolithic. So as far as a small pilot, I think one of the first success areas that we're looking forward to is working with our value-aligned community development and housing partners that are currently part of this initiative, bringing the CDCs and the other affordable housing developers into the fold. It took some time, and no, shade to them, but it was really just about educating them and understanding the nuances and the challenges. Now layer in everything that you said, Councilwoman Stevens, as far as, the technical financial aspects of trying to finance these deals. So we do want to start small. We do want to be able to identify units within the footprint of those value-aligned partners. And then parallel to that is working on both local policy as well as state and or federal policy that will increase our opportunity to advance policy in practice in, as it relates to this population. We know that, the criminal background advocacy is going to be critical. There are already efforts and conversations that have started. I'm not sure if Councilman Purnell is still on, but he may recall through the County Housing Stakeholder Group, and I know Khalil, we spent a lot of time there together. One of the special populations that we prioritized was returning citizens and the need to elevate that as it relates to housing. So a lot of this is really building on the solid foundation of many advocates and practitioners across our county. It's not new information, it's not a new conversation, but we are trying to be thoughtful. I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge that we are behind because of COVID this year, like what was being discussed earlier by Ms. Jackson. So she was talking about the supplemental grants for the community development corporations. We are in the same boat. Obviously, none of us could have predicted this year, so that it has slowed us down a bit as related to our plans. But the most important thing is our gratitude to Director Bryant to get this contract advanced with enterprise community partners. So we have that solid funding to really move into 2021. So I'm sorry that I don't have a specific example, but know that we have looked at models across the country, and we really want to start working with our local value-aligned partners and build from there.
Other questions from my colleagues?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Ladies, I've had the same question, and it's really never been answered. When we're talking about returning citizens, we're talking about felons from prison coming back, correct?
So I would answer no. We're talking about a combination of multiple individuals who have been directly impacted by our justice system. Councilman Gallagher, what you'll see, we have a national scan done from the Office of Reentry a few years back. And there are some Office of Reentries who strictly choose to maybe focus on the inmates returning home from their jail. There are some who only focus on their prisons. There are some who focus on those who are under supervision, meaning they're parolees or probationers. Through the historical approach to this office, when Sandra Bazell was actually the director, when they were implementing the office, is that it's chosen to focus on all of them. So that would mean there are those returning home from prison. It also includes those returning home from our jail. It also is inclusive of those who are already in our community with the justice back on probation and or parole. So that means anyone with the criminal background who may need support in the housing area is how we will focus this model, which is why we talk about the whole or all, which sounds like it's an impossibility until you narrow it down to that actual data in which both Erica and Elizabeth spoke about through the research done by CSH, which will be finalized as a direct result of some of the financial resources and support coming from you all through the Office of Reentry.
It's a little misleading on the way in which that's captioned, I thought, because I don't know if you're aware, but I'm certainly aware, and you should be aware, that the ODC, as prisoners are released, they are encouraged to go to Cuyahoga County because what we afford. While that's all well and good, I don't want to be taking care of people's other issues that come back to our community, cost us more resources for those that are needed within our community. And that's never really been dealt with. And I don't know if that's something you need to filter. I would suggest that you look strongly at that, because people from Cuyahoga County should be in line before people that committed crimes in Cuyahoga County from Summit County, and then are encouraged to come back where they committed the crime. If indeed that is still going on. I don't know. I would appreciate if you would look at that. Do you have any relationship with the Veteran Court?
So yes, Councilman Gallagher, to address both your areas of concern, I would in fact agree that that does happen. I remember that at a case management level that they in fact sometimes encourage people to return to Cuyahoga County because we are quote unquote resource rich. I do have a partnership. Since that time, DRC has obviously changed leadership as well in their directions. They now have an Office of Reentry and Community Enterprising. Their director is Ronnie Burks. She and I have begun to work together to kind of collectively think through, you know, what is some of the data that we need to support our efforts here uniquely in Cuyahoga County. So one of the issues is the data that they provide from DRC only tells you the county of admission. They don't tell you where they're going back into. So again, it's another data effort before we can even get into the practice efforts of what they may be doing and how they're steering individuals. And certainly when we begin to get through the weeds of this and putting together a strategy, that is something that will be considered, recognizing that we need to maximize the support for constituents of this county that are returning home. The second answer in terms of Veterans Court is yes. So the Office of Reentry is multifaceted. We actually provide financial support for Veterans Court as they expanded their docket to include those who are judicially released from prison this year who are veterans. We support the coordinator role for that as they increase that function. We work directly with Corrections Planning Board and Director or Administrator Marty Murphy.
And I would, and there's been kind of a glancing reference to seniors in this, yet no discussion regarding seniors. I'm wondering why that is.
So we're in a fortunate position, and I'm sure you all know, as our structure changed over in government, so did the Office of Reentry. So it moved originally from out of Justice Affairs into Health and Human Services. So our sister agencies and those partnerships are critical to looking at cross-sectional work. We begin to have discussions with Tracy as this population begins to age out to talk about how, again, we can't compartmentalize people. We are serving the same individuals. We're just challenged with knocking down different barriers for these individuals. And again, so that's a data-driven effort. One of the things that Director Mason and I have discussed is the fact that she needs numbers. She needs to begin to understand how many and what exactly is the need, and then how we can come together in terms of synergy. So everything here is in a beginning phase, which is very much why I made an effort to really drive home that this will be a data-driven approach, and that strategy is really important first. I talk a lot about the fact that we usually run off our gut in reentry, meaning we just know people need something. We care, we want to do something as a government, but until we start to make really data-informed approaches to how we do something, and not just, you know, be in a space of, you know, trying to drive the bus and, you know, create a bus, we may never really get the impact that we want. So this is the first time we'll have the opportunity to really sit on some of those things, think about cross-collaboration, provide Director Mason with the numbers she needs, and then we can bring them on board to really plan and take note. So the only partners in terms of county that we've been able to really maximize in this space thus far actually is our County Office of Development and our County Office of Homeless Services. They've been a critical piece to us, you know, creating data, figuring out, you know, providing numbers that we may not have or information that we may not have, and, you know, also educating us in spaces that we may not know, because these are the things that they drive home every day. So by no means are we trying to take over their space. We're trying to make sure we come together in one space to actually have something that means something to the constituents that we all serve.
Right, and that's something that the county has historically not been very good at. So I appreciate the fact that you have that on your radar. I'll finish with, while this is a multi-level problem and probably not fully solvable, but at least you have to do something for something with something. I would suggest, in whether it's fair or not, I personally don't care. I think those that have provided services to the country in Cuyahoga County should be first in line for any services. And that would be our homeless veterans that are in the courts, and our seniors who have literally built this county with paying their taxes and being citizens of Cuyahoga County. And thirdly would be those that are quote unquote returning home. And I would focus mostly on those that are literally returning home, which would be the felons, not the misdemeanors. I think that net is cast way too far. I think we should take care of individual sections of this to see where we can go before the net's broadened, as you have already broadened it. But anyhow, it's like I said, it seems to be a good start, and I wish you luck, but I would hope that you keep an eye out for the concerns that I've addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman Gallagher. And certainly, again, this may sound in some ways choppy, right? We may not be able to have all the answers to the questions that you provided today, but this is part one of many conversations as we go through this project together. We don't have a blueprint or a roadmap to doing this. So we are literally, building as we go along, which is why it's really, really critical to have you all support, but also your feedback. Thank you for challenging us today. Thank you for asking us questions that maybe perhaps we haven't thought of and we haven't asked ourselves. We knew Councilwoman Stevens would come with the heat because she knows the space. Councilman Gallagher, you're actually absolutely right. When we think about pilots, we may want to think about prioritizing certain subpopulations. So we really, really appreciate your time. You could have been a lot of places and you could have been off this meeting maybe 40 minutes earlier. So we are grateful and we do plan on coming back. And, in the interim, feel free always to, contact our office if you have additional questions. I work really closely with these ladies through the coalition. I'm grateful for them and their knowledge and expertise because this is not my area of work. So.
It is an incredibly important area of work, as my colleague, Councilman Gallagher spoke about. Doing work, especially with the veterans, will probably be a way to find funding that might otherwise not be available. I don't know that we have a facility for homeless veterans in Cuyahoga County. It would be good to take a lead. That is something people easily fall in love with. But as Crystal knows, I am easily accessible. And so I really do want to be helpful. This is not hard. It is hard work, but it is not hard to get my attention on this topic. So I would like to invite all my colleagues to follow up with Crystal and Erica and Elizabeth. I think their work is special work. I'm completely biased, and I acknowledge that right now. But we typically only want to meet for an hour, and our hour is up. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to virtually participate with us. Madam Clerk, is there anything else we need to pay attention to in case I missed it as I moved off of my virtual agenda? And you're on mute, Madam Clerk.
Yes, Ms. Stevens. Is there any other miscellaneous business?
Do any of my colleagues have anything else they'd like to share this morning? If not, I want to thank everyone for their time, and we will, when is we have a meeting later today?
Yes, we do. We have a committee of the whole meeting at 1 p.m.
Thank you. At this time, I will adjourn this meeting if there are no further issues, and thank you all for your attendance.